denial can erase what was done. Spirit of the Coast Salish, Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Puyallup people that are still here. Continuing to honor and bring to light the ancient heritage, let us lifting, inspire us to continue and fight and to call out the injustices that this country was founded on and change the inequities that continue to exist. How
Thank you so much, Travis, and good morning to all the folks that are here. We welcome you, and we're just saying how much we're pleased that no one has to think about driving anywhere, and we can be together this morning at our tables to have some coffee, hopefully, and conversation. So briefly, I just will say thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here, and want to make sure we spend all of our time answering as many questions as you can, and know that we've been working hard, not only during the session, but throughout the interim to really try to meet the needs of the families across Washington state, for me with special focus on the needs of our community in the 30th Legislative District. So can hardly wait for your questions, and we'll pass it off to Travis. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Travis. I just got word that we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with the sound. And so just wanted to let everyone know, bear with us as we're navigating this digisphere for our town hall. My name is Jesse Johnson, honored to serve the 30th Legislative District and honored to bring voices to the halls of power this year in many ways in this virtual reality, through public testimony and through communication with our delegation. As Travis mentioned, I serve as Vice Chair of Public Safety. I also serve alongside our newest seatmate, who we're excited to hear from, Representative Taylor, in Community and Economic Development. And I serve on the Appropriations Committee, where we look at our state budget. I'll just say my priorities this year are COVID, economic recovery, police accountability and reform, and expanding youth development in our community. Thank you so much for the time, and look forward to the questions.
Thank you. It is a blessing to be here this morning. As you all know, we are experiencing the same challenges that you are experiencing, and today is no different with the snow. Some of you may know that this morning I had to help my mother and my brother get to the access bus so they could get to dialysis. And I'm so thankful that we have essential services and essential workers who are still able to help us, not only in a pandemic, but when we have a weather emergency. I am proud to serve the 30th District and to be with you today. My priorities for this legislative session is really to bring opportunities and solve the challenges that have been presented by the pandemic. It's COVID, COVID, COVID. We need to have a public health response that's inclusive. We need to have economic development and economic recovery that's inclusive. And we need to make sure that we're moving to a future that really supports our whole community. I look forward to answering your questions today and working with you throughout the entire year and this legislative session.
Thank you so much, Travis. And thank you for the question from Kimberly around our police accountability this year. I want to begin by saying I believe that all our law enforcement should hold the sanctity of human life and preserving human life as their highest value. I believe that most do, the vast majority, but we need to change our police culture so that it is a priority and we can rebuild trust within our communities. I'll start by saying we have three main goals in our police leadership team this year. That's setting expectations, creating transparency, and building systems of accountability. This year, we do have a bill around data collection for all use of force across the state. That is being brought forward by Senator Tawana Nobles and Representative John Lovick. I have a bill, House Bill 1203, that will establish community oversight boards across our state so that people in our community can review public complaints from use of force, can help our chiefs with department protocol, and also consider the characteristic and context of our local community when applying new police practices and procedures. I'm excited to bring House Bill 1203 forward, along with House Bill 1054 to address police tactics, and House Bill 1310 to address use of force. Please follow these bills along the process as we move forward in the session. Happy to answer further questions, but I'll end with this. I believe that every single officer in our state is accountable to community. Just like in education, when teachers do something wrong, sometimes they get in trouble for that. We have a decertification bill that will help to alleviate some of those concerns. We also have a statewide standard for use of force that will alleviate some of those concerns. But it is absolutely imperative that we place preserving and protecting human life as a statewide standard, and use of force as a last resort. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope folks can hear me now. We do have a question from the chat. It is from Lisa, who asks, I'm wondering your thoughts on teachers being back in school, mostly unvaccinated, whereas you all are doing business virtually. And I think I will ask Senator Wilson if she would like to take this question.
I am going to take this from both a public health perspective, an education perspective, and a family parent choice perspective. And that is, I believe strongly that we need to make sure individuals have access to vaccinations and that they also have an opportunity to choose when and until they're vaccinated to come back into a setting, especially when we're talking about on-site learning with children. And although the numbers of children who have COVID or pass COVID is still lower than others, we know many of our teachers are at risk, and they live in multi-generational families and also may have compromised systems or live with those that may have compromised systems. And until we have access, I think it's critically important that we follow the science and the public health knowledge and go slow. I know that there are children who are not feeling as if they're making progress and are really struggling right now with our online environments. So we have to continue to figure out ways to meet not only the academic, but the social and emotional needs of children in ways that does not impact or put at risk individuals in our community and the outcome that may lead to death. I think it is too much of a risk to take.
Thank you. The next question is also in response to COVID. This question is from Janice, and Janice asks, how will you ensure the next round of funding for small businesses, including nonprofits, will be awarded to us here in Federal Way, especially in the BIPOC businesses? Representative Taylor and Representative Johnson, I think you both maybe want to respond to this.
Yes, both of us serve on the Community and Economic Development Committee, and it's really critical that we have resources deployed into areas that are certainly outside of our metro areas or outside of Seattle and Tacoma. And we're in one of those communities where we have businesses that are struggling and that had difficulty accessing the resources. We have micro enterprises, we have gig economy workers who did not qualify for services or PPE and PPP program support. So we really need to respond to and make sure that our community members and our neighbors have access to those resources. Just recently, we passed a $2.2 billion relief package that should help with the small business owners' needs, especially around the tax relief, the unintended consequences of a tax bill that happened before the pandemic. And we're really trying to make sure that employers can sustain through these challenging times. We need to hear more from you as business owners around your specific needs. I know that the Chamber of Commerce is working on an economic program to ensure that more folks have access to the capacity building and the resources and the training that they need to ensure that they not return to normal, but go to new possibilities and become even more thriving than when the pandemic happened. So we don't want folks to just be made whole. We want them to be better than what they were before. Rep. Johnson?
That was a great response by Rep. Taylor. And I guess the only thing I'll add is, we must first acknowledge that, Black and brown businesses have been hit even harder than other businesses during this pandemic. We have seen the closure of almost 40% of Black and brown businesses across the state since the beginning of the pandemic. And so as we're deploying out resources, I think we need to do some community assessment mapping across the state and see where those businesses are. A lot here in South King County because of gentrification. We also need to look directly at how we're providing equity in the process. Equity is not just an outcome, but it's the process as well. Who's at the table? And I'm really proud to say that we are working directly with organizations like the Federal Black Collective, El Centro de la Raza, Pacific Islander Community Association, to help with technical assistance for small businesses in our community, as well as what Rep. Taylor mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce. Because a lot of times we just don't have the connections or the resources to the banks to be able to get these funding deployed out and to be able to get the help we need to apply. The last thing I'll say is I am working directly with the governor's office to include funding for our school district around career and technical education, pre-apprenticeship trades in our high schools, because I believe that'll be a big part of the economy as we move past this post-COVID pandemic. There'll be a lot of construction projects that are currently on hold that will continue, and having young people that prefer that pathway to go into the trades right out of high school and make a career wage job will be great for our community. So I'm excited about that process and looking forward to seeing that in our high schools.
Travis, could I take a shot at just talking about the private nonprofits and the community-based organizations, because they too have been hurting during this pandemic and have been serving you throughout this time, although schools have been doing online. And throughout the pandemic, there have been relief dollars that have gone through the Department of Commerce, as well as the department that works with our school-aged youth to make sure that there are additional dollars going to those programs, and have been working across the state, looking at geography, but also looking at underserved populations, access to resource, and where deserts existed already that now have become extreme because of this pandemic. So with delivering food, services, mental health services, clothing, all those kinds of things have been happening. And so our Boys and Girls Clubs and our YMCAs, our local organizations have really stepped up, and we need to make sure that they continue to get dollars. There was $50 million in this latest round going to childcare. And when we think childcare, we have to think birth all the way through age 13, because we've realized that for many, school was the care setting for children. And so it has become a real struggle for families. So really keeping my eye on our private nonprofits and our community-based organizations to make sure that they stay afloat so that we can have the economic recovery that we're all looking for.
Thank you. We now have a question from Vinny. Vinny asks, what is happening with the fishing pier down at Redondo? And I think, Senator Wilson, you might have something to say about that.
I do have something to say about that. We were able to fund last session dollars to do the study that was needed to find out about what replacement might look like or what repair might look like. And I am happy to say have submitted another capital request this budget go around to make sure that we have the dollars now to actually do the repairs and that we need in order to open the pier back up and allow that to be accessible to our community. And I know it's one of my favorite places of the 30th Legislative District, and it was very important to me that we had access for our community. So fingers crossed, and I believe that we'll find out soon whether that will actually move it through the budget process, but I am hopeful.
Thank you. I'm going to go to one of our other questions that was submitted in advance. This one is about housing, and it's from Richard. Richard asks, what considerations is the legislature giving to address housing shortages by encouraging condo buildings to free up underutilized houses? And Senator or Representative Taylor, perhaps you'd be interested in speaking to the housing question?
Well, this session, we have prioritizing, folks remaining in their homes. It's a public health concern. In terms of freeing up condo spaces to, I guess, increase the rental market, that's really up to the owners of those properties. However, we can encourage and figure out if there's a program that would make that transition available. But we haven't seen any bills in the Housing Committee that are related to condos specifically in terms of expanding that market. What we know is that we need more affordable housing options and more multifamily home options in this region. And we know that folks really want to live close to where they work. And so we also need to expand family wage jobs. We want folks to be able to have one single job, not 5 jobs, so they can afford their house, so they can afford their daycare, so they can afford their food. We want folks to be thriving in our community. So we have to look at multiple ways of getting to, affordable home purchases. So if a family wants to purchase a condo, that's a great option. If a family wants to purchase a home, one of the challenges that we have with the eviction moratorium is that we're going to eventually end it. So what does that mean for folks who've been behind in rent? So one of the most important bills that we have in the House right now is House Bill 1236 with just cause eviction. And in the 30th region, Federal Way voters overwhelmingly supported just cause eviction. And a few other cities in this region have also supported that effort. So we definitely need to make sure that there's rental assistance for folks to fill that gap so that our small landlords and housing providers are not left holding the bag, and that we have stable housing options for communities so folks don't have to move further and further away from their center of community, their center of economic opportunity, and destabilize where we are as a community. So we really need to look at long-term solutions, and that definitely can include the condo options that you talked about. And I'd love to follow up with you in the future on some details that may work for us.
Thank you. We've got some great questions coming in from the chat, so keep them coming. The next question we have is for Diana. The question is, how can we reduce crime in federal way by implementing your proposed legislation regarding how police respond to criminal activity in progress? I think this was directed to you, Representative Johnson.
Thank you for the question. And, I will acknowledge, public safety is a complex, nuanced issue. One of the things I've learned in this process and talking with law enforcement, talking with community, talking here with our local chiefs, I've had conversations with every local chief here in the 30th, is a lot of our crime is socioeconomic related. I believe 85% of the crime in the 30th is related to people not having the resources that they need. And so I think in order to address the root cause, we need to invest in our people, not exactly programs, but people. What we've seen in Seattle and different places this year is too much investing in programs rather than in people. And so I'm focused on making sure that we have workforce development so that our young people can live and work in the same area. I'm focused on addressing homelessness. I have a bill to address homelessness as well. And I think we also, in terms of the police reform, if people trust their police, we're going to have less violent interactions. Also, police have a lot on their plate in terms of the scope and sequence of the work that they do. And so I really believe in investing in our social workers, our mental health therapists, our behavior specialists, so that they can help with this process. There's a great program up in Marysville that I learned about. And they basically have a social worker, mental health therapist go out to the community for folks that are unsheltered or unhoused and work with the law enforcement officer to get resources to those people on the streets. Because I think a lot of the times we just don't have that relationship building, and we don't have enough going out pouring into the community. And so people are gonna, unfortunately, especially with this pandemic and the economic uncertainty that we have, commit crime that are socioeconomic related. And so I think we can increase that. I also am working directly with Republicans across the aisle on a bill that would enhance professional development for police officers in terms of mental health, because they're suffering as well during this pandemic. They're having to address and respond to a lot of different crimes. So while we're increasing accountability and transparency and setting baseline standards for strategies for police, we also need to support them. We hear a lot about this, defund the police. I believe we need to invest and also hold them accountable at the same time. And so that's exactly what we're working on in the state legislature, is to enforce the law, but also hold our professionals accountable for the work that they do. And I think that'll give us positive outcomes.
Travis, can I jump in here?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm totally in agreement with Jesse, Representative Johnson. And one of the bills, one of the challenges that we see in our community is that we have folks who are suffering through substance use disorder, mental health, and they're in middle of crisis. And we've heard from law enforcement that they don't feel that they are trained to respond to these types of crises. One of the bills that came through is House Bill 1392 that will establish a mobile crisis intervention program. It's very similar to a program that is founded out of Eugene, Oregon, where I'm from. It's called Cahoots, where you have civil, members of the community who are responding to these crises and getting a person into emergency access resources. And this would really help reduce the calls directly to law enforcement on issues that really don't need law enforcement attention. So if we can work around that, that could also help with the response to what people are perceiving as crime. Poverty-related crimes, the criminalization of poverty is one of the challenges we really do have to address. And secondly, the mayor of Federal Way has requested body cams. And there's long history and long research that shows that body cams can increase the accountability, not only on officer behavior, but also citizen behavior, because you have the evidence of the interaction between both parties. So if law enforcement's asking for resources to help them hold themselves accountable, and the community is also seeing that that's a resource that helps build trust, these are investments that we need to make.
I'd love to jump into this. Is often a great conversation. I am in such agreement. We're the only place in the world where it seems you have to do the wrong thing to get what you need to do it right. And those are built-in inequities that have been here for decades. And that's what we're trying to solve. As I think about this, it is a public health issue. And as we think about service and support, that's why early learning matters to me so much. When we have prevention versus intervention, the outcomes are good for all. When we think of return on investment, the amount we would save in the other end of the spectrum would be better served, I think, investing, as Rep. Johnson talked about, in the humanness of our community. I also, though, know that we are often not well equipped in communities to respond to the needs of individuals. And I am working from institutional framework, and in my work on human services, reentry and rehabilitation, working on a bill around how it is that prior to release, especially when an individual has been incarcerated or been in state care for a period of time, and received ongoing services, how it is we make the bridge so that when an individual comes into a community again and re-enters, that those support services that one needs are immediately available and there is not a gap, which is oftentimes, again, what puts an individual right back into the system, but also are the very individuals that we are talking about, those that have mental health needs, drug and alcohol needs, extensive behavioral kinds of supports, oftentimes vets, and individuals who are in this situation through no fault of their own. So critically important that we do this as a community and think about what supports we can put in before we have to risk, I think, what we know is harm to people, and that's not what we want to do. We want to help people in this community.
Thank you. We're going to jump to another question. This question is from Jennifer. Jennifer asks, Senator Wilson, regarding school and virtual education, COVID vaccine, personal choice, on-site versus learning, virtual learning, how can we plan to deal with the usual and customary issues in a society? I think the question is really about, in this COVID time, when you have folks wanting to go to school, folks wanting to be stay safe and use virtual education, how are we going to adjust? How do we respond? How do we give people the resources they need to be successful?
Well, we haven't said it yet, but broadband is an issue that we know families and communities, small businesses, government, everyone has struggled with. I also think we are not going to go back, and I believe Rep. Taylor kind of alluded to that. My belief is we have to think about what was working before we were in this pandemic, and what do we hold on to, and then what have we learned and started to do differently that becomes part of our new reality or how we look forward. What I know is many children and families have thrived in the virtual environment, and many children and families have not. And as I look forward, that's where choice comes into me. I think we now know that there are many options for young people, and that there is not one way of learning and not one way of receiving or getting information. But in order to be successful, young people need to show what they know. And right now, I don't believe our digital platforms nor the equipment that our young people have allow them to be as proficient and able to show us what they know in the virtual and digital reality as I'd like them to be. So we have to think about what other kinds of equipment and accommodations need to be made. And that's for all students. But I believe we have to think about and both. And I will use Auburn as an example. Auburn School District ended up doing a night school, and they have over one full elementary school's worth of families and children going to school from 4:30 to 7:30 every night. And in that school day for them is academics, mealtime, time for children to get ready to go to bed, and then they read. And they have increased the engagement of families dramatically, and especially the involvement of our second language families in that community. So I think we have to think forward, and we have to just really look at what works best for children and families, and know we have to think and both, and not either or.
Travis, can I jump in here too?
Sure.
we realize with the pandemic that we also have, as Senator Wilson talked about, a digital divide. And we also realize that it's not just use of the internet and digital devices, it's the lack of actual infrastructure, even within the 30th district. Folks may assume that everyone had access to broadband. So you can imagine if you're trying to have everyone in the household on their individual device, number one, if they even have enough devices for the children to be in school. Number two, if the parent has a device to if they can work from home or if they have the opportunity to work from home. And number three, can they afford to have the internet access? There's so many parts to the digital divide that has been a challenge for our school districts. And so what is meaningful choice if you don't have the opportunity to be at home because of your employment or because of a lack of your access to broadband and other services? And it's tied to our business needs as well. Businesses that may not have broadband in their particular neighborhood or specific location might not be able to make a transition to an online space. So there's just so many challenges that are interrelated, as we heard earlier with the workforce issue of childcare and how we know that so many families were depending on that. So, we have to look at these issues not individually as something that is not related to other things, but look at it holistically and be in partnership with each other. That's one of the most amazing things about being in this delegation with Senator Wilson and Senator Johnson. We all have our specialties and we get to talk amongst each other and figure out, okay, what unintended consequences is this policy decision going to have in this space? What policy decision is going to have an impact on education, economic development, housing? And so having that kind of coordination between the three of us really support the residents of the 30th district and beyond. And so I'm excited to do the work with everyone and solve these problems.
Can I just add that language access is another huge issue as you think about our 30th delegation and our 30th constituents, and that's another piece of this. It's one thing, again, to have devices, but with families taking the lead in being teachers of their children, it also added a lens, not only for us, but across the entire state about we had learning that was happening by everyone. So I'm trying to address that as a state issue for 294 school districts, again, with a laser focus on what it means for us in the 30th and the families and the children and the staff in our districts that we serve.
Thank you. I have a question that was submitted in advance. This one is from Saffronia, who asks, I am concerned that higher educational requirements will limit access to good jobs for folks who cannot afford it. How will the state ensure equal access, I think, to higher education and workforce development? And I'm going to ask Representative Johnson if he could talk about some of the work that's being done in that area.
Thank you so much, Travis, and that's a great question. I think that it is an issue, and it's something that is complex. One thing we are working on is to expand access to the Washington College Grant, formerly the State Need Grant, because with that, we can actually have the funding available for our young people to go to 2 or 4 year institutions in our state. And it's also making career pathways a priority, and it's expanding programs that are helping to guide students through community and technical colleges or apprenticeships and increase the supports that they have. I'll also say we have to increase the capacity at our public community and technical colleges, our 4 year colleges. We need to have more slots, and that's a reality. I mean, I went to the University of Washington as a senior in high school. I did not think I was going to get in, and that was back in 2008. Now it's just even so much more difficult 13 years later to get into the institution. Less than 0.7% of applicants get accepted to the University of Washington. So I think we need to work on that. I was actually proud to support a bill by a Republican that mandated that for our student athletes in our state, a certain portion, I believe it was 50% of the scholarships for athletics from our state colleges had to go to in-state students. And I know, out of state might not like that, but we need to invest in our in-state, because with the restrictions and the regulations due to the pandemic, a lot of those student athletes have not been able to play sports for almost a year and a half at this point. And in other states like Texas or Florida, where they're less restrictive, they're able to continue their play, send videos to college coaches, and get accepted to institutions. And that's not fair. It's not equitable. So I was happy to support that bill from Representative Walsh in Aberdeen. I also would say that we need to look at expanding apprenticeship and internships for our students. I mean, we live in one of the wealthiest states in the entire country, yet just 25 minutes down the road in Federal Way, our students don't have access to Boeing, don't have access to Google, don't have access to Facebook. We need to expand those internships. We need to expand apprenticeships in the trades. That's why I'm happy to support $500,000 to start a trade school program here in Federal Way. And so I think we need to look at this post-COVID evolving economy with a fine-tooth comb and see where the opportunities are. Like Representative Taylor said earlier, we have to be centered on opportunities and invest in those opportunities. And I know this question may come later, but how are we going to pay for this? We need to look at our progressive revenue options to be able to pay for increased opportunities for the services that we need. Because in order to just meet where we were at last year, we have to fill a $2 billion shortfall. And so to increase services, it's going to cost even more money from our state. So we'll probably talk about that at some point, but I think it's important that we're centered on opportunity as we move beyond this pandemic.
I also want to say that we have a system that holds people where they are and doesn't allow them to move forward. And I say that as a woman who knows that I walk with privilege, and not everyone has the generational wealth nor the ability to move forward. And every system we have allows you to go so far, but only so far to keep you where you're at. So an example I would say would be childcare. Again, when we think about students and taking away the work requirement, but also allowing them to be eligible for support if they are parents that are going to school beyond just a technical degree, but also an AA or an AAS. And hopefully, as we again consider revenue and progressive revenue, as Rep. Johnson brought up, can think beyond and think about BAs and think about masters and how it is we allow people to be successful and we don't hold them to a job that will never allow them to have the wage to be able to oftentimes advance the way that some of us have been able to. And I just, will say that's critically important. So again, childcare, meeting the needs of families is important. We pay more for childcare than we do for a year of college right now for our students, if you're a parent with a college-age student.
Yes, and expanding opportunities for students who are making the pivot. Imagine if you had one of the jobs that was lost in the pandemic and you're looking to go to the next opportunity. We have to make investments in our colleges, our technical schools, and other places where folks are turning to right now to transition from where they are to where they want to be. And so I know that Highline College had to close down a few of their departments because of the lost revenues in the pandemic. And we really need to make sure that we're making investments. Investments mean that there will be a return back to the community. And so when you have more folks who are skilled, highly skilled, we can solve many of our challenges. We have a more resilient community. For example, respiratory therapists, an AA degree, making it easier for them to come to our state and for those to get trained in our state to help folks who are recovering from COVID. We're solving issues right now. These are issues that some people knew were long-standing, but we are in a moment where we can respond to it and ensure that we're not going to make the same mistakes as we did before. So it's really critical that we help community members pivot to opportunities that get them out of the challenges that they're facing right now and into the being centered in opportunity in their future.
Thank you. Just as a quick note, we have about 10 minutes left. So if we're going to get to more questions, we're going to need shorter answers. This question is from Karen. Karen says, I work with the most vulnerable populations, migrant families in King County. Many are struggling with covering rent, getting food, and finding work. What is in plan to help out those families? And I feel like maybe Representative Taylor, you want to start off maybe talking about the $2.2 billion COVID relief package and how that might help some of those folks.
Part of the package does help all Washingtonians. If you're a resident in the Washington state, we must address your needs. And so I believe that there are additional funds to help folks who may have an undocumented family member or a mixed family. We need to make sure that folks have opportunity and access to resources. The House just passed a civil legal aid bill that allows for folks who are undocumented to receive civil legal services. And you know why this is important? Folks who are undocumented are paying taxes. They're contributing to our economy, but are at risk of exploitation by folks who know this fact, and that they need to be able to have access. Our neighbors need to have access to the resources that they are also paying for. So it's very important that we support the whole community, no matter how you arrived, no matter where you're going, and no matter what we're going to do in the future. We all want to have a brighter future.
There's actually a 70 million went to assist. I just had to look it up to make sure. The undocumented immigrants that Rep. Taylor talked about, as well as 26 million for food assistance. So that was just in the package that came over from the House that was voted out of the Senate and signed by the governors. So that relief should be coming soon, because it was what we call an early action bill and did not wait for the end of the session. And it's not the only one that will be coming, but it's some immediate relief.
Thank you. We have a quick question. I think maybe Senator Wilson, you had already touched on this, but Jennifer had asked, are you speaking with working with families who have the continued need for childcare, or those who lost their job and remain at home? Senator Wilson, what is being worked on in that area?
Wow, this is near and dear to my heart. And no, family, I'm working toward universal access, regardless of who you are and where you live. If you have a need, it should be taken care of. But right now we do have both a House bill and a Senate bill called Fair Start for Kids Act. And within that, it gets rid of the cliff where individuals couldn't take a raise or an increase in pay because it would double or triple their childcare. We have also increased the subsidies that are going to providers, and have also put a flat rate and limited the copay that a family will pay based on your income. And there's services and supports inside that bill for children, for families, for our communities, for providers, for family, friends, and neighbors who are caring for the majority of our children, as well as our school-age children, so that families can look for work and not have to worry about caring for children, applying for a job, and interviewing all at the same table at the same time. So it made it out of both the House and the Senate committees. It is going through Ways and Means in both the House and the Senate on Tuesday. And again, you will see some very dedicated dollars to support childcare as the economic recovery strategy for families across the state of Washington.
Thank you. We have another question, and this is from Anna. Anna asks, what's happening with UW Federal Way? I don't know if anyone has some insight and wants to share.
I know still in progress. Rep. Johnson, do you know any more? I think the building or the site is an issue, but I'm not sure. That really is a
Yeah, I think
district.
it's more of a city question. I would ask the mayor and city council, but I do know it's still on the books. There was an investment last year and the year before. I know Senator Wilson, you were part of that investment work. So I would just ask the city about that though.
Thank you. I think we probably have time for one more question. And this question is from Kathy. It was submitted in advance. And Kathy has her question is there anything you can do to help the overwhelmed Washington Employment Security Office? I have to call 3 times a day, every day, for over 2 weeks to finally get through to a real person. I will be homeless if I have to wait much longer.
Can I first say, please reach out to our offices if you have not. This is not just a community issue, it's a statewide, it's a global issue. And we know there are families that are suffering. And our staff work every single day and they work together to help individuals who reach out to our offices to kind of try to weed through the challenges and to try to expedite things. And if you have not reached out to any one of our offices, please do with as much information as you are able to share. And then our staff can spend a little time doing a little digging, and you will get a human when you get our office. They're overwhelmed. It is not that you don't deserve or not that, I wish I had a checkbook I could write. I would just say, please let our offices know so that we can do what we do, and that's help our constituents.
And that leads into an issue that many of our residents in the 30th district are facing is, rental assistance needs. So please, if you're in a position to pay your rent, pay your rent. Don't think that the eviction moratorium is going to mean rent relief at the end of the moratorium. There will not be enough money to go around for everyone who may be at risk of being behind in their rent. But help is on the way locally. We're also anticipating another package from the federal government for rental assistance. So please speak with your landlords, get an arrangement, find out anything you can to extend your tenancy. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but please do not wait until the eviction moratorium is over to address your housing needs. Do it now. Get in contact with your landlord. So again, rental assistance is on its way. We have to prioritize folks who are in the highest need, most risk at losing their tenancy. But certainly those who have the ability to continue to pay, don't need to tap into that resource. Please pay rent right now. Let's not take advantage of the system. We all have to work together to ensure those who have fewer resources can get access to the resources they absolutely need and can be thriving at the end of this thing. We're going to get through this. This storm is going to pass, but let's make it easier for those who have fewer resources.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are about out of time, and so that will be our last question, but I will stress that we will try to answer questions in the comments, or if you stick around to the end of this event, you will be able to reach out to your lawmakers directly. So thank you for everyone who participated in our virtual town hall. I'm going to turn it back over to the legislators for closing remarks. Senator Wilson, would you like to go first, and then we'll hear from Reps Johnson and Taylor?
Just thank you so much for the questions. Please reach out. It's never enough time, but I so appreciate spending the hour with us this afternoon, and hopefully you'll see some good things and feel some relief coming soon.
And I'll just go ahead and say thank you to all of our community workers, first responders, those on the front lines. The work you do is invaluable, and not just for the communities you serve, but the greater good. We had a tough year, 2020, with the intense election, stress from the pandemic, social unrest, and it really revealed and elevated the amount of work we have to do as a state legislature. But rest assured, your delegation is working hard on behalf of you every day. And this year, we're focused on COVID relief, we're focused on economic development and recovery. We're focused on equity in all of our budgets and laws, addressing climate change, police reform, but it all is coming in due time, and we have to work together. It's not just us, but really reach out to us, like Senator Wilson said, and make sure that we're working together on behalf of our state. The last thing I'll say really quickly is get vaccinated. I know it's a touchy issue in some communities, but we got to get vaccinated when you have the opportunity, of course. But there's vaccination centers across our state, here in South King County as well. So please get vaccinated, mask up, stay safe, and thank you for the time today.
And I'll just close out by saying thank you for your perseverance, your resilience, your thoughtfulness in your outreach to us as legislators. Without you, we won't know what to focus on and what to prioritize. So keep letting us know, especially when there's a bill that really impacts your life. Reach out to us, let us know. We look forward to working with you throughout this term and throughout the year, and know that as we're working in a virtual setting, it may seem like it's a slower process, that there are fewer opportunities to engage with us. Certainly make the ask so that we can get you on the calendar. It is a little overwhelming to do that work. I'm learning, wow, emails. But we are working together as a team and trying to be as responsive to community as much as possible. So appreciate your patience.
That's all the time we have this morning. Thank you for attending today's event. If we did not get to your question, we will, like I said, be answering questions in the comment section, or you can contact the member offices directly via email or phone, which will be up on the screen shortly. Have a great rest of your weekend. Goodbye.